Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the final episode of That's the Law. You heard right, the final episode. I've been doing this show, it's close to 30 years, and we're actually wrapping up tonight. I think it's time. And I'll tell you at the end of the show about a new show that I'm going to start. But this is going to be the last episode of That's the Law. And it is only fitting that our fabulous guest is Representative Ruth Balser. Ruth, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
And the reason I say that it's only fitting is because she is my major recidivist. She has been on the show, by my count, it was something like 19 times. So she's been just terrific. She's always there when there's an issue and we want to discuss it, and she'll give us legislative updates. She's been fabulous. I searched the archives, and it turns out that your first appearance on this show was November 30th of 1998.
Oh, so I had just been elected for the first time to the legislature, and I hadn't even been sworn in yet, that means.
Okay, and what I did that show was a legislative update with you, Cindy Cream, and Kay Khan.
Oh,
that
wow.
was the three of you.
Yes.
I think we might have filmed that one in my living room.
I remember filming in your living room.
Yeah.
Kay was already a representative at that point for 4 years, but Cindy Cream and I, Senator Cream and I, came in at the same time in '98.
So I had Kay on
Yes.
the last show for her victory lap.
Yes.
And after we got off the air, I have to tell you that she realized the one thing she wanted to say that she had not said in the show, and I said, I'll say it for you, it's okay, was what a good team the three of you were. Senator Cream, Representative Khan, and Representative Balser. What a good team you were, and she meant to say it on the show. So I said, "I'll cover you. You know, you'll say it." And I think
it's absolutely true. I think we all feel that way. That we were able to work together to support one another and to represent our constituents together. And, you know, that doesn't happen in every legislative district. Sometimes the House and the Senate, maybe they snip it, whatever.
Right.
Never happened with us. We always just worked together to represent people in Newton. It's been great.
Right, and you've said that to me before I even mentioned it tonight, so I know that you mean it.
Yes.
On your first appearance, I referenced an article that was in the Boston Globe from 2 weeks before my show, and that was called "The Lawmaker Who Wants Fairness." Okay, and that was you, and I think it's some, and also it alluded to the fact that you're the first psychologist elected to the Massachusetts legislature, and you had been 8 years a Newton alderman,
right?
And then now you've been a state rep for 26 years.
That's right.
Well, the lawmaker who wants fairness, did you get it?
Well, I worked for it. I think what it means, you know, I was part of the struggle for marriage equality, for instance. I take fairness to mean equality, you know, making sure everyone has equal access, equal rights. And of course, that was a big victory of all of ours, marriage equality. But I worked for fairness to women. Some of my biggest successes had to do with 2 bills which prohibited charging women more than men for the same insurance policies.
Right.
That's about fairness. I've worked for fairness for people who suffer from mental health challenges and addiction challenges. Many folks with those illnesses are treated unfairly, and I've worked, you know, for them to be treated fairly.
Right. It's wonderful. And I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say it because there's nothing fair about Donald Trump.
Right.
and no sense of fairness or fair play. And it's just so disheartening. We'll talk about him later. This isn't an interview about him, it's about you. And now we'll talk about your awards.
Okay.
I made a list. You were House Legislator of the Year. You got that from the Disability Law Center.
Right.
Distinguished Legislator Award from the Boston Bar Association. Lifetime Achievement Award from the Massachusetts chapter of the National Organization for Women. Legislative Career Champion of Dignity and Care Award from the Dignity Alliance of Massachusetts. You are the retiring champion by the Massachusetts, voted or awarded the retiring champion by the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus and the Association of Developmental Disabilities Providers.
Yes, it's been lovely.
Ruth, congratulations.
Thank you. These awards.
No one's even said thanks to me. Never mind getting an award. I haven't even, no one even said, that was nice, thanks. I mean, it's just wonderful that you get those accolades.
Well, you've done a wonderful show for 30 years.
Oh, thank you. Finally, I got something.
Good. Yeah. But it's been nice. I mean, it is tied into my retirement. I think that many of these organizations have been my partners in the work over these years, and I think many of them took the opportunity this year to thank me as they knew, I was leaving. The Boston Bar was special in a way because I'm not an attorney, and so many legislators, I'm a psychologist, and so I often get awards from mental health organizations. But, it was sort of special that the Boston Bar saw me as the distinguished legislator, and that's because of my work fighting for funding. I shouldn't really say fight but supporting funding for civil legal aid, making sure that low-income people have fairness, equal access to the courts,
right,
which is important to the Boston Bar.
Yeah, it's nice. Wonderful. So I've got you here. I've got to ask you a legislative update. What are your most recent? Let's talk about your most recent legislative accomplishments. And I know one was the breast cancer screening bill. Tell us about that.
So that was a big accomplishment. That was a bill that I worked on with the Massachusetts Radiological Society. And basically the goal is to make sure that there are no barriers to women getting preventative care, diagnostic screening and evaluation. It gets into the whole issue of some women have dense breast tissue. They need further evaluations, further screening, specialized mammograms, not the one we all get, but then specialized. And insurance companies were charging co-pays and deductibles on that, and so if you didn't have the money, you might not get the screening. The bill eliminates those financial barriers. Those tests have to be covered completely by insurance companies now. And it was great. It just passed a couple of weeks ago. There was the governor really celebrated the signing. It's a big deal. I mean, it's going to save women's lives.
Congratulations. I'm surprised that you would get any pushback from healthcare from the HMOs, let's say, because it's in their interest. It would cost them less money if they provide screening and these things are caught earlier than years of treatment for someone the cancer goes undetected,
Right, but I guess it's just so baked into our insurance system that there are co-pays and deductibles. I mean, that's how they manage their finances, I guess. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right. So. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And there was a recent bill, climate. I'm so concerned about the climate.
Well, yes, thankfully, most people around here are. And the legislature's been very busy. What I should mention is, because some of the media is very critical, that we went past our July 31st self-imposed deadline, but we did it because there were a lot of bills that were still in the hopper. And so even though the fall around the election season is usually a quiet time, we've been busy. We went back into session to vote for a very big climate bill and also a big economic development bill. And that was important that we did that. We've now passed climate bills, I think, 3 times in the last 2 years. I mean, the legislature is really trying to stay on it.
Right. Well, and particularly important, it sounds to me like you stayed in session or to get these bills passed before the election, because in the event that Donald Trump, who is anti-climate, what's the word I want to use? Anti-climate.
Anti-science.
Anti-science, right. That it was going to be harder to put these protective measures in place.
Well, the states, another way of looking at it is the states really have to step up, because with Trump there and with the Republican control of both chambers of the National Congress, the states are going to have to act. And so it's really important that Massachusetts, New York, California, the states that are willing to do this step up.
In some regards, what Trump is doing, he's trying to get rid of government at the national level. There's no question that's what he's doing, institution by institution by institution, to get rid of it. But that's going to bring it back to the states, which could be bad nationally, but it's not bad for us in Massachusetts, where we have some self-control.
Right. I mean, in a way, that's always been the case, which is that at the state level we try to do as much as we can. But certainly when we're fending off what is essentially a right-wing attack from the federal. Now, we did that even before he got reelected, but because of his appointments to the Supreme Court,
Right.
women's right to abortion was dismantled. We stepped up right away here in Massachusetts to make sure that in Massachusetts, women would still have access to reproductive health care. And then after the Dobbs decision of the Supreme Court, we acted again to make sure that if women traveled here from another state, they would have access. So, yes, a lot falls to the states.
So what did we do about Roe and about the Dobbs decision?
Well,
this was saying that you can't be prosecuted for.
Well, then a woman has a right to an abortion. I mean, to
So if you
visit.
come here, you have the right
Yes,
to that.
right. You have the same right that a woman living here has. I mean, theoretically, what the Dobbs did was turn it back to the states.
Right.
Now, if
Right.
Trump decides to get a national abortion ban, then we're in a different ballpark. But
Right. So over the years, this is I invited you on. I just love having you on the show, and also I wanted to give you a victory lap. So because you are not going to, you didn't run,
Right.
and you've retired from after 26 years. So I want to talk about your accomplishments. I made a little list of some of them.
Okay.
I think one of the major areas to start with for you is mental health, because
Yes.
has been a major focus of yours.
Right. Well, so as you know, I'm the first psychologist to ever serve in the Massachusetts legislature. And so when I got to the legislature, I made mental health public policy a top priority of mine. And I've been involved in legislation and budget amendments to improve access to mental health services in Massachusetts. One of my accomplishments was I participated in the first mental health parity law back in 2000, participated meaning I was on the committee, but then in 2008, it was my bill that expanded what we had done in 2000. So making sure that substance abuse was also covered, not only mental illness. Those were a result of legislation that I filed and championed. More recently, I've gotten involved in criminal justice issues.
Right.
And the reason for that is still because of my commitment to the mentally ill. Because sadly, so many people who suffer from mental health and addiction challenges land in our criminal justice system.
Right.
So I've worked a lot, and I'm still, even right with a month left to go, I'm still working to try. I call it, my agenda is called decriminalizing mental illness and addiction. These are illnesses, they're not crimes, and our society still incarcerates people unnecessarily instead of sending them to healthcare systems. And I have a number of bills, without even going into the details, but they all are about that, about trying to get people into the healthcare system, not the criminal justice system.
Right. And the term is diversion.
Yes,
Isn't it? To divert them into healthcare facilities and mental health programs rather than incarcerating them.
Well, in fact, in some instances, they're now being diverted from the healthcare system to the criminal justice system. And I'll just mention, because this is my top priority as I wrap up the term, when we civilly commit men for addiction, which means if someone, because the women are treated differently, if a man is very sick from an addiction, so sick that either a loved one or someone is worried that he could either hurt himself very badly or someone else, he can be committed to involuntary treatment. This is someone who's not been charged with any crime, but he gets brought to court. And in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is the only state in the nation where the civil commitment law says, essentially, if the public health beds are full, you can send him to a prison program. And so more than half of the men who are civilly committed in Massachusetts land in a jail. And these are men who've not been charged with a crime. So we're incarcerating people who've not been charged with any crime.
Yeah.
So even as we speak, I have legislation that's in conference that I'm hoping will still come out this month that will end. There's one state prison where these men are sent. My language puts a timeline for closing that institution and requiring the state to build sufficient capacity in the healthcare system.
Right. And of course, you've championed and spearheaded the gender equity in insurance premiums.
Yep.
Right, which was you can't charge women more
Than men.
which was happening.
Yep, for two types of insurance. One was annuity policies Took me 10 years to prohibit it there, and then the next 10 years to prohibit it in disability policies. But until a few years ago, women in Massachusetts, if they wanted to purchase a private disability policy to protect them in the case of if they're self-employed and they buy a disability, women were paying more than men, and that's no longer the case. I'm very proud of that.
And we're proud of you for helping us with that.
I should mention, all these things are a team. No one does anything alone. You get 160 votes. But it is true, in bragging, that it does take one person often to lead and to focus on an issue. And each of my colleagues, they focus on different issues, and they each have victories. But it does take someone to focus. And so I'm proud of the ones
and to create the bill and to champion it and to go around and try to
convince everyone to vote for it.
Convince people to vote for it. So absolutely. I hope it's in the distant past, but you were the one who filed the bill to require nursing homes to track COVID data.
Yeah, and that was amazing. When COVID happened, we all kind of don't think about it anymore, but when we think about it, we remember it was this nightmare. It was striking nursing homes. Older adults living in nursing homes were just dying, and families were shut out of they couldn't come in, but they also weren't being told what was going on.
Right.
And so I filed a bill to require that nursing homes report daily. And then the state was required to post it all on the website. And we got that done during COVID. And, it was important.
That's great. Fire safety.
Yeah, so that goes back to the year 2000, when in Newton, what is now Wegmans Plaza, used to be a little shopping mall that had a terrible, tragic fire, if you remember. 5 people died.
My dear friend's brother died in that fire.
Wow,
So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
5 people died. And as you remember, the whole community grieved. And I started to look into what was the story on, I remember the Newton Tab had a line in the story that said something about state regulations. And I was like a brand new state rep then. And I looked into it, worked with the fire professionals, and learned a very simple thing, which is the way to prevent fatalities from fire is to have automatic sprinkler systems.
Right.
Water puts out fire.
Right.
And so I worked, that took about 10 years too, but I had a bill that passed that expanded the requirements
And
for
that's in
sprinklers.
new public buildings.
Actually, not public necessarily. It covered like commercial buildings.
Commercial buildings. Public lands preservation, so important.
That's a big one. This is fun, talking about
This is the walk down memory lane.
That's right.
The Victory Lap, we're walking around.
Well, the public lands I worked on for like 22 years. That's how long. It takes a long time to get these things done. But that's a bill that protects our public parks from development, basically. It strengthens Article 97 of the state constitution, which protects. Massachusetts has a beautiful thing in the Constitution. We have the right to clean air, clean water, and protected open space as a right. And my bill strengthened that protection.
And that protected Hammond Pond, Hemlock Gorge, the Charles River Reservation, and Crystal Lake.
Well,
right?
those are local, the way I talk about those are sort of local gems that I work to get funding for.
Okay.
So it's related in that it has to do with my love of open space and parks.
Yeah.
All those places are protected by Article 97, but they weren't threatened by development, they were just threatened by neglect.
Yeah.
And so I have pushed
yeah.
for funds to take better care of all of those places that you mentioned.
Right. So you've got, a month to go now?
Yeah.
This is being taped in the beginning of December of 2024. And what you're working on now, Section 35. Tell us about that.
Well, it's in the conference committee. What happens is the House, how a bill becomes a law, House passes a bill, Senate passes a bill. In that, both House and Senate were working on a bill to deal with addiction issues. And I filed an amendment to the House bill. That bill has a whole lot of other important things, but I filed something about Section 35. I filed language that would stop sending these men to a prison and instead directs the state to develop more health care facilities. The House adopted my amendment. The Senate didn't do the same thing. It's in conference. Again, we're past the July 31st deadline, but this year everyone's saying the heck with the July 31st. It's our own rule. It's not a law.
Right.
And that bill's in conference. My understanding is the Senate also does support it, and it's gonna, I'm just hoping, I've been told it will come out, and that will be a great day, because
That would be wonderful.
I have said many times I do not want to retire without knowing that those men aren't being sent to jail anymore.
And
unfairly, back to the fair, they are unfairly being sent to jail.
Fairness, right. Library bill.
So the library bill has to do with the big, mean old Amazon-type companies that charge way too much money for libraries to get electronic and digital material. So if you want to get, online book, you can go to the library still and get old-fashioned books like those, but it's very hard to access electronic material, and that's partly because the publishing companies charge way too much and make it very difficult. And so I have a bill that hasn't passed this year that I am leaving to other people to work on, but it would, the short story is it would protect access to libraries, because we want libraries to fulfill their mission in the 21st century. And in order to do that, they have to have full access to electronic material.
Okay, excellent. And, well, your successor has been elected already.
Yes.
And Greg Schwartz, you had endorsed.
I did.
Okay, so is he going to, do you have a sense of whether he's going to continue to fight for the same things you
Well,
fought for?
I assume he'll develop his own priorities. He's a physician, which is special. I always brag I was the first psychologist. He'll be the only doctor in the House. And I think...
Oh, you get it, doctor in the house?
That's right.
Get it, Newton, doctor in the house?
So I think he'll bring some special expertise. We have huge crises in healthcare, with Stewart and the private equity, and he really understands, and the challenges to primary care. So I see him bringing that.
Yeah.
As well as, of course, we all, regardless of our special interests, we represent our constituents. So he'll keep working, to make sure Crystal Lake and Havant Pond and all these places are protected.
And the healthcare issues are intensifying
Yes.
now, big time. The doctors are trying to unionize. They're fed up with the insurance companies. There's a lot going on. The Stewart left so much damage in its wake. Their bankruptcy and the whole thing,
so I think he brings a lot to that, and I predict he'll focus. The way I focused on mental health, I have a feeling he's going to focus on those kind of healthcare issues.
Which would be great.
Yeah.
So let me just, let me ask you, as long as I got you here.
Yeah.
Do you think that the House, the Senate and House should be audited?
They should be independently financially audited, but I don't think it's the auditor who should do it. So I know that Newton and the state voted for question 1. We, for the most part in the legislature, view this as a separation of powers, a constitutional issue. I don't think question 1 would hold up in the courts. But we agree that we should be the legislature should be financially audited. And in fact, always has been, and that's been made public. We just passed a new rule to give to the auditor, this was an attempt at a compromise, to give the auditor the ability to select the independent financial auditor.
Okay. Yeah, I think what I understand the legislature doesn't want is someone auditing appointments or committee selections or things like that.
Exactly.
But the financial aspect
should be audited. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Right, and that's what we want to do, is have an independent financial audit.
All right, so usually I get signals telling me where we are in the show. I don't know where we are, how much time we've got left. John, if you can tell me how much time, that would be great.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, it's over there. It's not on my monitor. Okay, 5 minutes. Plans for the future.
So for me, so I should just say what's interesting about the legislature is people enter it and leave it at different stages of their own life. Some people come in young and then go on to other things, I came in after having had a very full and meaningful and long career already as a psychologist, as a mental health, if I go all the way back to my even before I had my PhD. So when I got to the legislature, in a way, it was like a midlife career change. And then I did it for 26 years. So I'm really retiring. I'm not
Yeah.
just retiring from the legislature. I feel like I've had I feel actually blessed that I've had two very meaningful careers. And I feel very ready
Yeah.
to retire.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to, taking hikes in the woods and reading books and spending more time with my family and,
Right.
just doing more. I have a few projects in mind. I want to do my family tree.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Right. Nice.
Different things.
Yeah. I'm similar to you because law was not my first career. I came to
Right.
that later in life, and I basically retired from law practice about 2 years ago. It's very similar. I
Yes.
had about maybe a 30-year law practice. I'm still involved, as you will be, I'm sure. I'm a mediator and an arbitrator still, so I'm doing that. Just tell me any thoughts on what we can do to heal this nation,
Well, I think
because we're all suffering a mental breakdown.
I think we have to keep working. I think we have to keep working on it. I mean, the Democrats lost this election.
Yep.
But we still have people. Elizabeth Warren wrote a wonderful piece about all the things she plans to still do in the Senate.
Okay.
I think we have to keep working. It's funny, healing, we do have divisions in this country.
Yeah.
And but I think we don't want to give in to bad things. So I don't, I don't want immigrants deported. That's going to happen. Families, this is going to be
Right.
terrible. Kids
Yeah.
who've lived here their whole life being sent to a country they've never been in. So I think I guess my message is that everyone has to stay engaged. Maybe it's not so much healing. How do we maintain hope? How do we maintain our commitments?
Right.
How do we keep at it?
Yeah.
Not give up, not
Yeah.
roll over and say, I think, but maybe in healing, I mean, maybe the working at it shouldn't be so aggressive that we can't bridge the divide,
Exactly.
but we have to keep standing up for our values.
Oh, wonderful. Ruth, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Wherever the path takes you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to take the last 2 minutes of the show to tell you that, and it really dovetails beautifully with what you just said, because I'm starting a new show. As I said, this is the last episode of That's the Law. But the new show, which will start in January of 2025, that's next month, is called You're Doing Good. And what that is each episode I'm going to highlight a different charity, a nonprofit. We'll start in Newton, and we'll see how long the show goes, and maybe we'll branch out into statewide and maybe national organizations and what people are doing to help other people. And I think it's a way to heal. It's a way for me to heal anyways, by doing more charitable work, by my doing more volunteer work, by my doing more giving more philanthropically. So that's what's in store.
That sounds
for
great.
Newton. And I just want to thank, because I guess it's the end of the show here. I'm so glad you were here for my last
Thank
guest.
you.
It's just terrific. And I want to thank John Fremer, who's in the booth right now. John, I want to thank Kathleen at the station. Laura Johnson still stands out as one of my fabulous directors, producers. She did so much work for me, archiving my shows and doing what's called the tape that you see at the beginning of the show, the intro and stuff. She was just fabulous. So I'm sure I'm going to forget people, but there are so many people. Of course, Bob here at the station. So many people to thank. Just been fabulous. So I always end by saying we'll see you next time on Law Line, but now I'm going to, on That's the Law, but I'm going to say I'll see you next time on You're Doing Good. Thank you and good night.